When we mention enlightenment, are we thinking of a state of absolute peace, or perhaps a point where the soul is completely in harmony with the surrounding world? Enlightenment in Eastern philosophy is not an achievement that can be measured or a destination that must be conquered. Instead, it is a journey that unveils new layers of awareness, a process of peeling away the layers of illusion to gradually recognize the true nature of oneself and the universe. The question I want to ask you is, what is enlightenment? Is it the ability to completely control one's mind, emotions, and reactions? Or is it simply an illusion, an endless loop that the mind continues to engage in every day? Eastern philosophy offers a different perspective on humanity and the universe, contrasting with the logical frameworks of Western thought. Instead of trying to analyze, control, and change everything, Eastern philosophy emphasizes letting go and harmonizing with nature. It focuses on inner awakening, rather than building the ego in the way we usually do. Eastern philosophy holds that enlightenment does not lie in seeking something outside oneself, but rather in turning inward, in the journey of accepting oneself, including both the weak and flawed parts. This is not a journey to become someone else, but a journey back to the self, to find oneself and harmony with all things. Seeking change in the mind is an effort that humanity has pursued for ages. Millions of people, over many periods, have tried to find peace of mind by improving and modifying themselves according to the standards they believe are right. However, the question here is, do we really know if we are trying to change in a way that we ourselves do not fully understand? Trying to change oneself might be the best solution, or is it just another form of avoiding oneself? In modern life, we are easily drawn to countless techniques and methods for self-improvement, from reading books, participating in personal development courses, to methods of honing thinking skills. All are efforts to make people more confident, more successful, and stronger. But does this really bring deep happiness? Does that journey of self-improvement truly lead to enlightenment? Or is it simply an endless cycle where our ego finds temporary joy in each new step forward, but never feels satisfied? Eastern philosophy emphasizes acceptance, an acceptance without judgment or expectation of change. Because when we try to change what is beyond our control, we often create an invisible pressure that makes us constantly tense and dissatisfied. This philosophy does not encourage us to give up our efforts, but rather to pause and observe calmly, to see that everything that happens has its own reason and meaning. The spiritual journey is not a path of improvement or change in the conventional sense, but a liberation from the concepts, expectations, and constraints one imposes on oneself. To achieve enlightenment, one needs to learn to stop struggling to become and instead live fully with oneself, right in the present moment. In the next section, we will explore further concepts such as letting go of the ego and recognizing the limitations of self-improvement circles. Only when we truly understand the self can we begin the real journey of liberation. The journey to enlightenment is not only about self-discovery, but also about letting go of the attachments of the ego. In Eastern philosophy, the self is not merely a consciousness of oneself, but it also carries patterns, expectations, and a desire to assert oneself before the world. This ego always seeks validation from the outside, from social norms to personal achievements, and from that, it creates an image of oneself that one believes is the true self. But the truth is, the more we try to assert our ego, the more we get caught in the vicious cycle of self-improvement without ever feeling satisfied. The state of not knowing is an important first step in letting go of the ego. In Eastern thought, not knowing does not mean ignorance, but rather an open-hearted acceptance of what is unknown, what is unclear. It is the ability to face the unpredictable without needing to hold on or control. This state is not easily achieved, as our ego always craves certainty, always wanting to assert and protect personal viewpoints. The more we cling to fixed knowledge, the further we drift from the truth, the further we stray from the essence of existence. Eastern philosophy holds that trying to control everything only hinders the journey to enlightenment. When we try to control our emotions, striving to perfect ourselves according to external standards, we are continuing to reinforce the ego, continuing to fall into the trap of struggle. True wisdom does not come from accumulating more knowledge or abilities, but from the understanding that everything is impermanent, that everything changes, and that nothing is fixed. Only by letting go of the desire for control can we truly achieve peace. Many people get caught in the vicious cycle of self-improvement, thinking that it is the path to enlightenment. We try to change ourselves according to the standards of others, striving to improve ourselves based on what is considered good or successful in society. But every time we achieve a new milestone, a better version of ourselves, we set a higher standard. And that process never ends. It's a vicious cycle, an endless chase that the ego clings to in its relentless search for validation. We can ask the question, can we truly achieve self-improvement when the one trying to improve is the one who needs improvement? This is a profound and important question, as it awakens us from the illusion that the ego can improve itself. When the ego tries to become better, it is merely continuing to reinforce itself, maintaining distinctions, and creating unnecessary expectations. Each step of improvement is merely a way for the ego to showcase its superiority, not a path to liberation from itself. What I want is to control everything, to prove that it exists and that it matters. But the more we try to control, the more we strive for perfection, the more we find ourselves bound, pressured by the standards we set for ourselves. Self-improvement, if not understood correctly, can easily become a subtle trap, leading us into a cycle of expectations and disappointments, of fleeting joys and prolonged sorrows. And there, our ego never finds the peace it longs for. Letting go of the ego does not mean abandoning oneself, but rather liberating oneself from the burdens of struggle and desire. That's when we learn to fully accept ourselves, with all our weaknesses and imperfections. This does not mean that we no longer strive for development, but rather that we no longer have to place heavy emphasis on improving according to unrealistic standards. All development now comes naturally, no longer under pressure from external forces or from the ego wanting to prove itself. To truly let go of the ego, we need the courage to face imperfection, to accept that we don't know everything and don't need to control everything. We learn to observe the self without judging or adjusting it. This is a journey of liberation, of realizing that perfection is not something we need to achieve, but a state of mind when it lets go of all pressures and expectations. Only then do we truly feel free. One of the core philosophies of Taoism is Wu Wei, also known as non-action. Wu Wei. This is an important concept that helps us better understand how to approach life in a natural and effortless way. Wu Wei does not mean giving up all actions, but rather a way of living in harmony with the flow of the universe, not trying to go against or control everything around. In a world full of pressure and ambition, the concept of Wu Wei serves as a reminder that sometimes letting go and allowing things to unfold naturally is the shortest path to peace and enlightenment. Wu Wei is letting go not out of helplessness or avoidance, but from the understanding that all forced efforts only bring fatigue and confusion. When we live in the spirit of Wu Wei, we accept that there are things beyond our control, and this does not make us powerless. Rather, it helps us to be free. Like flowing water, we know how to be graceful and flexible in all circumstances, unimpeded by the barriers we set for ourselves. A clear example of Wu Wei is the way nature operates. From the rising and setting of the sun to the river winding along the terrain, everything happens naturally without any force or control. Trees don't try to grow, birds don't try to fly. Everything happens the way it is meant to be. We can also live that way, without trying to create things that are not in line with our true nature. That's when peace and harmony come naturally. Living according to the natural flow does not mean doing nothing at all, but rather knowing how to choose actions that are harmonious with nature and circumstances. Instead of fighting against or trying to control everything, we learn to adjust ourselves to what is happening, finding peace even amidst the turmoil. Perhaps in our daily lives, we have experienced moments of Wu Wei without realizing it. That's when we let things happen naturally without forcing them, when we listen and respond to the true inner needs, rather than external pressures. To better understand how to live in the natural flow, a non-judgmental observation state is an important factor. Non-judgmental observation is the ability to see things as they are, without adding thoughts, biases, or judgments. When observing a blooming flower, instead of analyzing, comparing, or trying to make it more perfect, we just need to accept and appreciate its natural beauty. This approach helps us gain clearer awareness while freeing us from the influence of desires and judgments. When observing oneself without judgment, we clearly perceive each stream of emotion, each thought, but are no longer influenced by them. Whenever we feel angry, instead of getting swept away or trying to suppress it, we just need to observe that feeling, recognize it without acting or reacting. This helps us approach emotions mindfully and objectively, no longer losing our peace just because of a fleeting feeling. We can practice this state of observation through simple moments. Try to observe yourself while drinking a cup of tea, focusing only on the flavor and the warm sensations spreading, without thinking of anything else. When walking, pay attention to each step. Feel the ground beneath your feet and the breath of the wind on your skin. From such small moments, we can gradually expand our ability to observe without judgment, helping us live more freely, no longer having to resist or cling tightly to anything. The philosophy of Wu Wei teaches us that unnecessary coercion or control only brings stress and anxiety. When we let go, we no longer have to face feelings of disappointment or failure due to unmet expectations. Instead, we feel content with what comes our way, cherishing them as they are. That letting go is not an attitude of resignation, but an understanding that we are a part of the natural flow, and everything happens in the best possible way. Wu Wei also brings freedom, as we no longer have to strive to live according to any mold, no longer have to force ourselves to become someone else. We are allowed to be true to ourselves, to act from the heart rather than from external constraints. Everything that comes to us carries its own meaning, and when we live naturally, those things will come more gently and peacefully. An interesting and profound concept in Eastern philosophy is non-attachment, a state of freedom from personal desires and expectations. Not needing is not about completely giving up on desires, but rather a way to no longer be controlled by them. When we reach a state of non-attachment, we are no longer pressured to achieve something, no longer worried about whether life is going in the right direction. Everything happened naturally and smoothly. That freedom allows us to live fully, accepting and cherishing whatever comes our way, without worrying about whether it meets our desires or not. Desire and expectation are two factors that often trap people in anxiety and dissatisfaction. When we always expect something to come or fear that something will not happen, we inadvertently create an invisible tension. Every decision, every action of ours is influenced by these expectations. And when the results are not as expected, we easily fall into feelings of disappointment, dissatisfaction, and even self-blame. Desires and expectations are not wrong, but when we cling tightly to them, we lose the freedom and ability to live fully in the present. The philosophy of not needing helps us let go of expectations gently. It does not encourage us to give up on our goals, but rather to recognize that the outcome is not always within our control. When we live without the need for everything to go our way, we will find a profound tranquility. We will cherish every moment without fear or regret. Living with no need is living freely, where every experience, whether success or failure, becomes a valuable lesson for us to learn and grow. The concept of not needing helps us discover our true self, because when we no longer concern ourselves with personal expectations and needs, we will see ourselves more clearly. No more layers of desire or fear. No more societal prejudices influencing. The true self is the part of us that is free and at peace within, not needing recognition from others, nor needing to achieve any accomplishments to affirm oneself. That is the state of absolute freedom, the acceptance and satisfaction with one's true nature without any image or role. But the question is, what is true enlightenment? Enlightenment is not a destination we can reach, nor an achievement we can attain. Enlightenment is a continuous journey, a natural understanding of the essence of everything. This is not a final state that one can possess, but rather the awareness that oneself and everything around are perfectly interconnected. In this state, we realize that there is nothing to do, nothing to become, and everything is perfect as it is. Enlightenment is when we realize that nothing is absolute. It is not a process of accumulation, but a process of eliminating the unnecessary. All desires, all expectations and feelings of anxiety dissolve, leaving only deep tranquility. This is the state of a completely free soul, unaffected by external values or social pressures. This is when we truly understand that perfection does not come from achieving something, but from letting go, from no longer needing to control or change anything. The journey to enlightenment is not a path of seeking something outside, but a journey inward, realizing the true nature of oneself. Each step on this journey is an opportunity for us to let go of a bit of our ego, to live more freely and fully. And when we live in a state of not needing, we will realize that everything is perfect as it is, that nothing is superfluous or meaningless. All contribute to creating true harmony, peace, and freedom. On the journey to enlightenment, unconditional love and acceptance are noble qualities, the foundation of a soul that has truly reached a state of peace. Love in Eastern philosophy is not conditional love, not bound by desires or cravings. It is harmony with everything when we love life naturally, without needing to demand anything from others or from ourselves. The famous philosopher and speaker Alan Watts once said that true love does not need to be sought far away, for it always exists when we open our hearts, when we live fully with ourselves. Unconditional love is when we love without expecting anything in return, without yearning for perfection. That is the natural state of the heart when it is no longer influenced by the ego, no longer bound by expectations or fears. In that state, love is a natural existence, needing no search elsewhere, but within one's own heart. Sometimes all it takes is a moment of silence for us to realize that love is not something we have to strive to achieve, but rather something that is always present in the nature of each person, just waiting to be felt and shared. Acceptance is another indispensable factor on the journey to enlightenment. Acceptance here does not mean giving up or surrendering, but rather understanding that everything has its reason and meaning. When we accept ourselves and everything that happens in life, we will no longer be swept away by negative emotions, and we will no longer feel the need to resist or change what is beyond our control. Acceptance brings peace when we understand that we don't need to change anything to feel happy. Many people mistakenly believe that acceptance means accepting both the wrongdoings, the tragedies, and the pain without needing to strive for change. But acceptance in Eastern philosophy carries a different meaning. That is the ability to see things as they are, without adding personal judgments or expectations. This is not weakness or resignation, but a profound understanding of the nature of everything, that every state has its value and every moment contributes to the wholeness of life. Love and acceptance help us let go of judgments, let go of the standards and expectations we have set for ourselves. When we accept ourselves, we no longer feel the need to change to fit anyone or anything. We can live freely and honestly, no longer fearing the need to become what others expect. This brings a great liberation, a sense of freedom when we live true to ourselves, love without reason, and accept without conditions. The state of enlightenment cannot be achieved when we still carry expectations and judgments. Love and acceptance are the paths to liberate ourselves from the burdens of the ego, from the pressures of becoming someone else. This is when we truly harmonize with the world around us, when we realize that nothing needs to be changed, nothing needs to be achieved to feel at peace. Peace is the natural state of a soul that has accepted and loved everything as it is. On the journey to enlightenment, an important factor that is often overlooked is silence. Silence is not just the absence of sound, but the cessation of the ego, of unnecessary thoughts, so that the mind can reach profound stillness. In this state of silence, worries, calculations, and sorrows gradually fade away, leaving only a pure and serene soul. From there, a natural connection with oneself and the greater universe began to emerge. The silence that Eastern philosophy emphasizes is not a complete silence in terms of sound, but an inner silence. It is the silence of endless thoughts, of constant worries and expectations, a state where everything inside comes to a halt, leaving an empty space where we can listen to our true voice. In that silence, we can perceive the true nature of everything, transcending opinions, judgments, and speculations. This is a very subtle state, not easily recognized in the hustle and bustle of life, but it is essential for achieving deep understanding. The role of intuition in Eastern philosophy is also extremely important. Intuition, also known as the voice of the heart, is a form of non-rational intelligence. It is not the result of analysis or reasoning, but a natural understanding that requires no explanation. When the mind reaches a state of tranquility, when we are no longer distracted by incessant thoughts, intuition becomes a source of inspiration, a bridge that leads us to the deepest truths. Eastern philosophy always encourages people to develop intuition as a part of wisdom, helping us transcend the limits of language and thought. Intuition brings understanding without explanation. That is the feeling of understanding directly and profoundly, without the barriers of logical reasoning or analytical consciousness. When facing a problem, instead of trying to find the answer through contemplation, we can rely on intuition, a voice from deep within the soul, a knowing that needs no explanation. This is the power of intuition, and when developed and listened to correctly, it can guide us to true decisions and perceptions. Silence and intuition are closely related, for only in silence can intuition fully realize its potential. When we no longer concern ourselves with meaningless thoughts, when the mind stops and focuses on the present, intuition can freely emerge, unhindered. Thanks to this, many Zen masters and sages always dedicate time to silence, to connect more deeply with their intuition. This state not only brings peace, but also serves as a profound source of wisdom, helping us clearly recognize the path we are on. In modern life, there are too many things that distract us, pulling us into continuous thoughts. Silence has become a luxury that few people can still find. But when we take time for silence, even just a few minutes each day, we can discover the wonders within ourselves. We can listen to the feelings, thoughts, fears, and desires that we didn't notice before. From then on, our intuition became stronger, clearer, and we could make decisions without being influenced by external factors. Eastern philosophy encourages people to return to silence and intuition, not to become detached from life, but to live more fully and to understand themselves and the universe more deeply. When we are silent and listen to our intuition, we realize that all the answers have always been within us. No need to search outside, no need to rely on what others say. We can live confidently and peacefully, for intuition will guide us, and silence will bring tranquility. Understanding and applying Eastern philosophy to daily life is not just about learning spiritual knowledge, but also about continuous practice and experience. Eastern philosophy emphasizes that enlightenment is not the result of acquired knowledge, but a way of life, manifested through every action, thought, and emotion. By living with mindfulness, we can bring the profound values of this philosophy into our lives, creating a journey of peace, tranquility, and deep meaning. One of the simplest and most effective ways to start is to practice mindfulness daily. Mindfulness is not only for moments of meditation, but can be applied at any time of the day. When eating, we can practice mindfulness by truly focusing on the flavor of each dish, feeling every movement of the jaw and not thinking about anything else but enjoying. When walking, we can pay attention to each step, the feeling of touching the ground, and the rhythmic breathing. These moments of awakening help us connect deeply with the present, making life richer and more meaningful. Meditation is an indispensable method when wanting to integrate Eastern philosophy into life. Meditation is not about trying to achieve a certain state, but rather a process of listening to oneself, recognizing and letting go of unnecessary thoughts. Just spend a few minutes each day sitting still, observing your breath, and letting everything happen naturally, and you will gradually feel your mind becoming lighter and clearer. Meditation helps us cultivate the ability to observe without judgment, making it a wonderful tool to get closer to inner stillness and intuition. Besides meditation, conscious breathing is also a simple yet effective practice to achieve inner peace. Breath is the bridge between body and mind, and when we focus on our breath, we naturally stop all thoughts and worries. Take a few minutes each day to breathe deeply, feeling the breath entering and leaving your body. Through that, we not only refresh our bodies, but also purify our minds, helping us become more peaceful and clear-headed in all circumstances. In Eastern philosophy, the practice of mindfulness and meditation is not just techniques, but moments of connection with oneself. When we practice regularly, we will gradually realize that happiness does not lie in external achievements, but in the moments we live fully, undistracted by the past or worried about the future. This is the gift of mindfulness, the path to liberation from unnecessary pressures and stress. However, to truly integrate Eastern philosophy into life, it is not enough to stop at personal practice. It is also necessary to combine theory with action. Whenever we encounter a difficult situation, try applying what we have learned instead of just keeping it in theory. When faced with a stressful situation, instead of reacting immediately, practice non-judgmental observation. Just listen without needing to respond right away. This helps us approach the issue with calmness and wisdom. bringing about change from within. Awakened action is when we are no longer influenced by the ego, when all our actions stem from understanding and respect for ourselves and others. Eastern philosophy encourages us not only to live mindfully during practice, but also to bring that mindfulness into all our daily actions. This requires patience and determination. But when we truly live by these principles, we will find life becoming lighter and more peaceful than ever. Ultimately, Eastern philosophy is not a fixed doctrine, but a dynamic tool, an experience and flexible application in every moment. Consider what we learn not just as knowledge, but as a way to live, a path leading to a meaningful and fulfilling life. Each person will have different ways of applying it, and it is the flexibility and openness to personal experiences that will help us turn this philosophy into a natural part of our daily lives. The journey to enlightenment is not a journey to seek something from the outside, but a process of returning to the inside, where each person's true nature always exists, unaltered by external influences. Eastern philosophy invites us to look deeply within ourselves, to transcend the limitations of the ego, and to discover natural peace and happiness. That is the journey of self-acceptance and self-love without being bound by desires or expectations. In the modern world, where complexity and stress are constantly increasing, Eastern philosophy reminds us of the value of tranquility, simplicity, and connection with the self. It doesn't require us to give up everything we have, but just to stop and listen. Listen to the inner voice. Listen to the silence to realize that each person possesses an incredible inner strength, a profound intuition that guides us through challenges and helps us find happiness, even in the simplest things. The journey of enlightenment has no stopping point, no specific destination. It's not an achievement that we can boast about, but a state of mind, a way of life. Eastern philosophy does not offer rigid formulas, but rather invites each person to explore and experience. Through that, we understand that all difficulties, joys, and sorrows are indispensable parts of a complete life. When we accept all those states without judgment, we achieve harmony and tranquility in the soul. The call for harmony and inner peace is a reminder for us to live fully in each moment, unaffected by the past or the future. This philosophy emphasizes that true happiness does not come from accumulation or control, but from letting go, from surrendering to the natural flow of life. Silence is the gift that Eastern philosophy brings us, helping us face all challenges and live harmoniously and freely. In each person, there lies a potential to attain enlightenment. The important thing is not whether we reach it quickly or slowly, but how we walk along that path. Walk with compassion, acceptance, and love. Let Eastern philosophy become a natural part of life, helping us live in peace and tranquility, without feeling the need to seek anything outside of ourselves.